Good evening. Tonight, relentless spring storms taking aim at millions of Americans following a series of violent twisters, leaving neighborhoods in the Midwest unrecognizable. New video just in from Jonesboro, Arkansas, as destructive winds and hail charge across the region. And just north of Arkansas, look at this, pictures of widespread devastation. Drone footage of Greenfield, Iowa, showing the aftermath of a massive twister. The community in disbelief, as you can imagine, and grieving after several people were killed. How can anyone survive that? Nearly 24 twisters touching down in the Hawkeye State. And check out this traffic cam video showing a tractor trailer caught in the crosshairs of a tornado. Flipped over like that. As we mentioned, storms now firing up, spanning 1,500 miles from Texas all the way up to New York. You can see the stretch here. Bill Caron standing by to time it all out. You might have noticed it's been a very active few weeks, though we are at the height of severe weather season this year. It's shaping up to be breaking records. 2024 is already above average for tornado reports compared to years past. NBC's Maggie Vespa starts off our coverage tonight.
Tonight in Iowa, a sprawling landscape of destruction after the latest deadly tornado outbreak.
That's a tornado, guys.
More than 24 reported twisters sliced through the Midwest, mostly Iowa, yesterday. One leveling the city of Greenfield. Initial surveys dubbing it at least an EF3 tornado, packing winds up to 165 miles per hour.
Everything was on top of me.
Joan Newell was trapped under the rubble of her home for 45 minutes before her Apple Watch alerted rescuers.
At one time, they didn't think I was down there, and I kept hollering, I am here.
This entire neighborhood is just obliterated. I mean, pieces of homes are scattered everywhere. And one woman who tells us her house was on a lot down the block says the cars that are now sitting on her front lawn, she has no clue where they came from.
Iowa authorities only saying multiple people were injured and killed, adding they're still in search and rescue mode. The state's governor declaring an emergency in 15 counties.
What would you say to people who feel like they're seeing an increase in the frequency and the severity of these storms?
No, it's cyclical, but I think right now we're going to take it pretty seriously. When they say you need to take cover, it means take cover.
A warning amid a ruthless spring with jaw-dropping twisters from Oklahoma to Michigan to Tennessee. So far this month, we've only seen 2 days without a tornado reported. Total 2024 seen more than 860 tornadoes reported across 37 states, marking the third most active start to the year ever recorded.
I've never seen a tornado like that.
Back in Iowa, Donna Pruitt's house used to sit across the street.
It was a matter of 30 seconds, and it was gone. And they said, Donna, if you would have been here, I wouldn't be here today.
All right, amid all that destruction, Maggie Vespa joins us now live from Greenfield, Iowa. Maggie, adding to the chaos there in Greenfield, the local hospital was damaged as well?
Yeah, Tom, it was. And by the way, you can see the chaos behind me, right? You can see cleanup crews, you can see power crews over here. But look in the distance, that red brick big building, that's the hospital that we're talking about. And we found out in that press conference today with the governor that indeed several windows there were blown out. It seems like it sustained some minor damage, but meaningful damage. So yesterday, volunteers, people around here, they were moving patients out of the hospital, we're told, to a lumber yard, which was being used, they say, as a makeshift hospital. Today, we're told that the triage center in town is now the local high school. Tom?
Maggie Vespa, wow. Okay. All right, Maggie, we thank you for that. 44 million, as we mentioned, still under the threat of severe weather tonight. Let's get right over to NBC News' meteorologist, Bill Caron. Bill, is there any end in sight to all this severe weather?
No, we have to go through the weekend, too, which is going to have some severe. I'll talk about that in a second. First, as we're going through this afternoon into this evening, we do have one tornado watch that's issued for areas from Dallas to Fort Worth, to Waco over to San Angelo. We've had 2 reported tornadoes today. They didn't do any damage. They're out in open areas, so that's so far so good. But we do have numerous storms that we're watching closely that could be producing a tornado right now, or at any time they can. This first one is just to the south of Waco. So Waco, you got some strong winds and hail, but from Killeen, Texas to Temple, Texas, this hook in here and this supercell, this has the potential to produce a tornado. The sirens are going off. Everyone's getting to their shelters. Further to the north, this is just south of Interstate 30 and just north of Interstate 20. This is Pittsburgh, Texas, under a tornado warning. Again, these are radar indicated. They haven't been spotted on the ground. It just means that that thunderstorm is capable of producing one at any time. Tomorrow, we shift our focus northwards once again in Nebraska, South Dakota, Kansas, and still Oklahoma, Texas, and Arkansas. It's just round and round responding day after day. And then as we watch the threat tomorrow, mostly going to be a large hail threat, isolated tornadoes. We're not expecting a tornado outbreak, but that could change. I fast forward this map. If you have your holiday weekend plans, this is for Sunday. We're giving you a big heads up from Memphis up the Mississippi River towards Paducah and St. Louis, here the Ohio River towards Louisville. A severe weather outbreak is possible along with a tornado outbreak, Tom. And I know that's right in the heart of the weekend. People need to pay close attention. It could be a very dangerous day.
Yeah, they got to track the news and the forecast all weekend. Okay, Bill, we thank you for that. We want to move now to Pennsylvania, where we told you a mass shooting happened outside of Philly and has left 2 people dead and 3 injured. The gunman described by officials as a disgruntled employee. NBC's Aaron McLaughlin is there with the details.
In Pennsylvania, a community shaken by gun violence.
It's pretty bad.
Tragedy unfolded this morning at a local linen company west of Philadelphia in the city of Chester.
This is a workplace shooting incident. Employee came to work today with a firearm, took out his anger,
and opened fire, killing 2 and injuring 3 employees who were transported to a nearby hospital. Adelina Orozco was there at the time of the shooting. She says workers ran for their lives. Resident James Pierce heard the shots and called 911.
Pop, 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 pop. Went to the door and I looked out. I seen people running out of the building.
Authorities later arrested the alleged gunman in a nearby city. They've yet to name him, but he's believed to be an employee of the linen company. The possible motive is the subject of an ongoing investigation.
The information I have right now is the employee had some issues with fellow employees, but nothing that would lead to what happened today. I mean, this is just everyone's worst nightmare.
Today's shooting now counted by the Gun Violence Archive as the 169th mass shooting so far this year.
It speaks to guns in America. It's heartbreaking. It's tragic. It has to stop.
Tonight, yet another American community in shock and an all too familiar call for change. Tom.
And this Friday will mark 2 years since the deadly school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. Today, families of the victims filing a $500 million federal lawsuit against individual police officers involved and the school district. The parents demanding justice after officers waited over an hour to confront the shooter.
Tonight, the families who lost so much in Uvalde now ready to fight back.
We've been let down so many times. The time has come to do the right thing.
Filing in one by one, mothers and fathers gathering right across the hall from where they waited for news on that terrible day, now announcing a $500 million federal lawsuit against more than 90 officers from the Texas Department of Public Safety and the Uvalde School District. Their call for justice coming nearly 2 years after a gunman killed 2 teachers and 19 students inside Robb Elementary School.
These were the last lines of defense for these children, but they were failed long before the shooting.
More than 300 officers from local, state, and federal agencies were on the scene that day, but waited 77 minutes before taking out the gunman. Body cam footage inside the school shows officers fumbling with keys, hesitating to move in, and waiting in the hallways as children were killed inside classrooms. The school district acknowledges the lawsuit and says it is open to exploring a resolution.
The Texas Department of Public Safety telling NBC News the department does not discuss pending litigation.
The families today also announcing a settlement with the city of Uvalde for a total of $2 million. An attorney for the family says they didn't push for more than what the city had in its insurance fund.
The last thing they would want to do was to inflict any financial hardship on their friends and neighbors in this community. Their friends and neighbors didn't let them down.
Last May, 1 year after the attack, I spoke with 3 mothers who lost daughters on that day.
As the days go by, it gets much harder.
It's hard waking up every morning.
I know a lot of you have decided to stay here and not move away. What has that been like?
I think it's more difficult. I hate this town. I hate living here. My daughter's here, though, so how do we leave?
The city of Uvalde agreeing to mark May 24th, the date of the shooting, as a day of remembrance. But at today's announcement, one parent noted the mostly empty auditorium, suggesting some may have moved on, but these mothers and fathers never will.
We'll continue to follow Uvalde. We want to turn now to power and politics, and Nikki Haley making a surprising announcement that she will vote for her former presidential race rival, Donald Trump, despite her criticism of him on the campaign trail. Haley making that announcement during her first public appearance since dropping out of the presidential race. Here's more of what she had to say.
Trump has not been perfect on these policies. I've made that clear many, many times. But Biden has been a catastrophe. So I will be voting for Trump.
For more on that announcement, let's bring in Republican strategist and former communications director for the National Republican Congressional Committee, and who also worked on the Tim Scott campaign, Matt Gorman. Matt, we thank you so much for joining Top Story. So did we expect this?
I certainly didn't. I'll say this. I didn't expect it today in her first public event since dropping out. I thought she would last a little longer in terms of keeping the suspense. But look, in the aggregate, no, I'm not that surprised. I mean, this is somebody who spoke out against Trump in 2016, ended up working for him, said she wasn't going to run against him, then ran against him. So I'm not surprised in the long term, but I'm surprised it happened today.
Yeah, and Matt, do you think she's making a political calculation here that possibly former President Trump might do better than many expect come November, and she doesn't want to be in Republican limbo forever?
I think you're right. If Trump was, say, down 5-7 points to Biden consistently, maybe she doesn't come out today, if at all. But I think the fact is, look, if the polls are where they are today, he is looking very good to possibly win. So get in front of the crowd and call yourself the leader of the parade instead of falling from behind. And I think that's probably factors into this a little bit.
Let's take a little trip, though, down memory lane to see what Nikki Haley has said about Trump just recently.
Donald Trump is turning the Republican Party into his own playpen, where it's all about him.
He is unhinged. He is more diminished than he was.
You know, there's something about former President Trump that he loves to lash out at his rivals, but then once they sort of kiss the ring, he welcomes them into the MAGA kingdom. He's doing that with Governor Doug Burgum, who at one point said he would never do business with Trump because of the kind of person he is, and now he's by his side every 2 seconds. Do you think Trump brings in Nikki Haley? I mean, there were a lot of people who voted for her in the primaries.
I think one thing you're right. He loves converts. I wouldn't be surprised if there's sort of a Mitt Romney moment where maybe they go and they dine at Mar-a-Lago and they invite the press in. Look, Trump likes converts, but he also likes to make sure they kind of work a little bit for it. I wouldn't be surprised if you see something like that this time.
What do you think Nikki Haley is? Where do you think she's positioned for a future in the party?
Look, I think this kind of buys her a seat at the table, whether it's certainly if Trump loses in 2028 or, maybe another role if she wants it in a second Trump term. Look, if Trump loses in November, the party isn't going to all of a sudden do a 180, right? This is going to be a more populist party. So having a seat at the table is important if you're Nikki Haley for that.
So look, with Nikki Haley, you have a diverse candidate. You have a woman. You have somebody who moderates, at least during the primary process, really liked. Is there any shot she would be on the ticket with him?
I mean, it wouldn't be bad for him to at least consider her. You're right. If, let's say, she never ran for president, she would be almost a no-brainer. I think it was certainly, what you say in the campaign, there can be some hard feelings, but on paper, she's already worked for him once. So it does make some sense.
Matt Gorman, one of the great political minds of his generation. Matt, it's always a pleasure to have you on Top Story. Now to the latest on former President Trump's classified documents case in Florida. The new images unsealed, appearing to show his assistant moving classified materials set to be returned to authorities, and the explosive hearing in court today after that assistant tried to get the case thrown out. Dasha Burns in Fort Pierce with the latest.
Tonight, stunning new images unsealed in former President Trump's classified documents case, appearing to show his longtime assistant, Walt Nauta, moving boxes of classified materials out of storage at his Mar-a-Lago home, where they were set to be reviewed by Trump's attorneys and handed over to federal authorities. Nauta, charged by special counsel Jack Smith with conspiring to help former President Trump retain and conceal classified documents after Trump left office. Today, Nauta and Trump's legal team in a Florida court asking Judge Aileen Cannon to dismiss the case for what they say is prosecutorial misconduct, accusing special counsel Jack Smith, the Biden administration, and the National Archives of colluding to prevent Mr. Trump from winning the 2024 election, which the prosecution has denied.
Deranged Jack Smith. He's a deranged human being. He has a huge record of failure because he goes so far out and people end up not being convicted. He goes too far.
Nada's counsel in court today arguing he was only indicted as retaliation for not cooperating with the government, sparking an explosive exchange. Prosecutor David Harbach calling the defense team's reasoning a garbage argument and a fantasy. Judge Cannon at one point saying to Harbach, "I'm going to ask that you calm down." The new documents unsealed Tuesday also revealing more classified materials were found in Trump's bedroom at Mar-a-Lago months after the FBI raided the estate. A district court judge overseeing the grand jury in the case writing, "No excuses provided as to how the former president could miss the classified marked documents found in his own bedroom at Mar-a-Lago."
The photos and additional documents are just more evidence in this documents case. The real challenge for the government isn't assembling evidence so far. It's been getting the case moving forward to trial.
I'm thrilled to be back.
The former president has sought to delay the start of the trial, originally slated to begin May 20th, until after the election. Earlier this month, Judge Cannon indefinitely suspending the trial date, bogged down in unresolved issues about the case.
It's a fair criticism that Judge Aileen Cannon has delayed this case longer than was necessary. It's been suggested that because Judge Cannon is a new judge, that she may be taking longer with these motions and issues than another more experienced judge might.
Trump also seizing on the new trove of documents, lashing out on Truth Social overnight. The former president posting that the unsealed documents revealed a plot from the FBI to use deadly force in the raid of Mar-a-Lago. The FBI quickly debunking that claim, issuing a rare statement saying the FBI followed standard protocol in this search as we do for all search warrants, which includes a standard policy statement limiting the use of deadly force. No one ordered additional steps to be taken, and there was no departure from the norm in this matter. And Tom, at the end of the day, Judge Cannon said she would take all of these arguments under advisement, did not say when we would get a ruling. So really, it could come anytime she decides to. This has been, as you heard from Danny there, a pretty drawn out process. So no idea when an actual ruling could come down. What I can say, though, is that these are not the first motions to dismiss. The defense has tried this before, and she has shot down previous motions to dismiss in this case, Tom.
Okay, Dasha Burns covering that case for us. Now to an update on something we've been following closely here on Top Story. As schools review how they respond to campus protests, the UCLA police chief has now been reassigned. Earlier this month, we broke down what happened at UCLA's campus minute by minute, this pro-Palestinian encampment coming under siege from counter-protesters. The clashes lasting for several hours before police moved in. At the time, the school told us they had opened an independent review of authorities' actions that night. Then, of course, there was the raid by police the next night. NBC News correspondent David Noriega has been following the latest developments out of UCLA and joins us now. David, what are we learning about the school's decision to shake up the leadership there with the police department?
Yeah, Tom, so they have reassigned the chief of the UCLA Police Department, John Thomas. We don't know exactly where he's been reassigned to, but we know that he is no longer in that position. And this is part of a larger overhaul of the university's entire security system. After this incident that you pointed out, this attack on the encampment and the ensuing confrontations between counter-protesters and protesters, the university created a new position of chief security officer who is now overseeing the UCLA Police Department and is undergoing what they say is a review of their overall security practices, not just with regards to this encampment and these confrontations, but in general. This removal of the police chief is a part of that, and especially given some congressional testimony coming up, which we'll be talking about, I think that we are likely to see more changes coming up with the university administration and particularly their security personnel.
And just to be clear, I want to go over this again. Has Chief John Thomas been public? Or has he said anything tonight?
So he confirmed to the Daily Bruin, which is the student newspaper at UCLA, that he was reassigned. So we know that that has happened. Other than that, since this news today, he hasn't pronounced himself. He did defend his conduct to the LA Times in an interview earlier this month, saying that he did everything he could to keep students safe, saying that he had advised university administration not to allow this encampment to take root in the first place, and generally defending his conduct.
And then tell our viewers what's going to happen with the president of UCLA. They're in front of Congress tomorrow?
Yeah, so Chancellor Jean Block is going before the Republican-controlled Committee on Education and the Workforce tomorrow in Congress. These hearings have been happening since the fall. They're very high stakes for these university administrators. Remember, these hearings led to the resignation of the presidents of Harvard University and UPenn. They really reflect the way that these protests have put these universities between a rock and a hard place, right? On the one hand, they face severe backlash from people who criticize them for cracking down on these encampments and what those critics say is violations of First Amendment rights. And on the other hand, from people who criticize them for allowing these encampments and these protests to happen in the first place. Very few university administrators have been able to successfully walk that tightrope. We'll see how UCLA does tomorrow. Tom.
Yeah, those hearings are definitely contentious. All right, David, great to have you. Still ahead, the Republican National Committee headquarters put on lockdown. Did you hear about this? The building briefly evacuated after a suspicious package was sent to the headquarters in D.C. What hazmat teams found inside that piece of mail. Plus, an alarming new study showing a link between marijuana use and psychotic disorders in teens. This is no joke, what the data reveals. And a former Miss New York falling prey to a new donation scam in which teens ask for money through Zelle before instantly stealing thousands of your dollars. How it works and what you can do to protect yourself. Stay with us. We're back now with a warning. A former Miss New York says she was the target of a scam on the money app Zelle. It starts with the suspect sharing a story to draw the victim's sympathy, and it ends with their bank accounts being drained. NBC New York's Melissa Colorado has this one.
It's a sunny day in Madison Square Park, and in this video, police say you're watching a scam unfold. Two suspects, possibly teens, strike up a conversation with a woman sitting on a bench.
They look for that soft target that's alone. Why? Because nobody's going to intervene. You know, what do? They pull on those heartstrings.
It's literally like the kids on the subway saying, I'm collecting money for my school.
But instead of asking for cash, these suspects want donations sent through Zelle, the electronic payment system.
It's almost as if they had a script. They were like, don't worry, we take Venmo and Zelle.
Just like the woman in this video, Brianna Siaka fell victim to this scam too.
They were telling me about their team and how they're performing and kind of distracting me. And one of the boys was like, oh, don't worry, ma'am, I'll put my information in your phone.
She made the mistake of handing her phone over to one of the suspects.
Within like 15 seconds, they were like, thank you, ma'am. And they ran away.
Siaka checked her bank app and discovered $2,000 was gone.
Word is out, you know, bad guys are communicating via social media, telling them how easy this scam is.
In less than 1 month, scammers have stolen $35,000 from 15 victims, mostly women hanging out in parks.
Well, I called my bank right away. I tried to get things frozen. Then I called the police.
Unfortunately for victims, Zelle fraud is not treated like credit card fraud. Of the 87 scam cases NYPD has investigated, they say no one has received their money back. We reached out to Siaka's bank, Chase, who sent us this statement. We want to remind everyone using peer-to-peer payment services to never hand your phone over to someone else. It's the same as handing them your entire wallet. Chase is actively investigating Siaka's case. In the meantime, she's sharing her story in hopes that the next person with an open heart doesn't hand over their unlocked phone to a stranger.
Be careful. This could happen to anyone. I'm a New Yorker for over 12 years.
Okay, Melissa Colorado, we thank you for that one. Time now for Top Stories news feed a little earlier than usual. We begin with the investigations into a suspicious package sent to the Republican National Committee in D.C. The RNC headquarters was briefly evacuated and put on lockdown after someone sent a package containing 2 vials of blood. The package was eventually cleared by hazmat teams. D.C. Capitol Police are now investigating who sent that and why. Terrifying moments for students on board a bus in Greenville, South Carolina. This is wild. Newly released video shows the moment the bus veers off the road, crashes through a fence before slamming into a mobile home. The school district said no one on the board the bus was hurt, and the home was empty at the time of the crash. The bus driver was given a ticket for speeding and is no longer employed by the district and clearly had a lot of cameras on that bus. A new study finding teens who use weed are more likely to develop psychotic disorders. We're not joking about this. Researchers from the University of Toronto finding the risk was 11 times higher for teens who use cannabis compared to those who don't, and 27 times higher when the analysis was limited to hospitalizations. There was no association between cannabis use and psychosis for people aged 20 to 33. The findings come as the U.S. government works to loosen federal restrictions on the substance. And Pixar beginning major cuts to its workforce. The studio will lay off 14% of its employees, about 175 people, according to a spokesperson for the parent company, Walt Disney. Pixar's last significant job cuts came last year with 75 positions eliminated. The animation giant also plans to move away from making original shows for streaming services like Disney Plus and shift its focus back to the movies. Okay, when we come back, a deep-sea detective joins Top Story Spotlight. Veteran ocean explorer Tim Taylor making one of the biggest discoveries of his career, and he's going to show us what he found more than 3,000 feet below the ocean surface. He'll be here in a moment to walk us through what he found. That's next. Welcome back. It's time for Top Stories Spotlight. And tonight we welcome to the show a very special guest, veteran ocean explorer Tim Taylor, who has just made possibly the biggest discovery of his career and bringing a mystery deep beneath the sea to life. Tim and his team have just discovered this right here, the USS Harder in the South China Sea, 3,750 feet underwater. The USS Harder, one of the most iconic submarines of World War II, it sank the most Japanese warships and received the Presidential Unit Citation, an honor given to military units for extraordinary heroism against an armed enemy during World War II. This is the 9th World War II sub discovery Tim has made. He has dedicated so much of his career to discovering, educating, and preserving the lost 52 submarines from World War II. In 2021, he was awarded the Distinguished Public Service Medal, the U.S. Navy's highest civilian award for his work on this mission. Tim is also the CEO of Tiburon Subsea, an ocean technology solutions platform. And tonight he joins Top Story in studio. Tim, first of all, congratulations on this discovery. Let's talk about the big news first, which you're revealing exclusively here on Top Story. You found the USS Harder. How did this happen?
Well, we go out looking for submarines, lost 52 submarines, and we targeted several in this area, and we were looking for the Harder. We specifically went out this year looking for the Harder. It is such an iconic submarine.
And these are images that you captured with your team.
Right.
When you saw this, when this comes back, what is that, an octopus on top of the hatch there? Yeah. When you see these images come back, what does it feel like for you? I know you've done this a bunch, but it has to be special.
It is. There are men here. This is a tomb. This is a graveyard, and submarines are designed to keep water out. They keep men in. And one simple example is when they found the USS Monitor after 150 years, and they brought up the turret. The Park Services did. They found 2 men still entombed in that. So these people are there. They're inside this.
And you do this in part for the families, right? I mean, these are families, military families, who lost their loved ones, and they never really got closure because they died at sea and they were buried, as you mentioned, in this tomb at the bottom of the ocean.
Yes, yes. We found 9 submarines or 8 submarines in a destroyer, but we found 452 men is what we found.
How did you get into this? Why did you get into this?
This is a journey. I guess I started with my dad fought in Okinawa. He was in the invasion force of Okinawa late in the war, was kamikaze. And that generation didn't speak about the war, all right? So when I discovered the R-12, which years ago you covered, we began to talk about the war and we began to share. And the Harder was a special one because it was lost about the time he was shipped overseas and he knew about it. And it was a legend in his time. So sharing this with my dad and moving forward, it was kind of the foundation of starting the Lost 52 project.
And how did you get into, is it ocean exploring? Is it marine biology? What exactly was your profession? And how did you get into this as we look at one of the vessels you work with?
Well, I've done this all my life, but I've always been on the cutting edge technology, whether it's deep mixed gas rebreathers, up to 300 feet deep, filming with designing and building digital cameras, running operations for other people. So we were field guys. We were out there doing and looking, and essentially diving wrecks up to 300 feet deep. And then when you want to go deeper, it is mechanics and robots now.
What have you learned searching the floor of the ocean, the bottom of the ocean?
The ocean. The ocean is our life on this planet. People don't understand that there's so much involved with fisheries and energy and weather. We are just starting to study them. We are just starting to understand them. The blue economy is like a $1.5 trillion economy, and by 2030 it'll be a $3 trillion economy. Now that's blue economy. That's a lot of stuff, but a large part of it is collecting data and understanding what's out there.
And you hear a lot of times that we know less about the oceans than we do about space. Correct. You hear that all the time. Is that true?
And most of the things that live on the planet live in the ocean because it's three-dimensional. It's not just the surface. It's all the water depth. There's life all the way to the bottom of the ocean.
Tim, some of our viewers may recognize you because when there was that horrible incident with the expedition crew that went to go see the Titanic and it imploded, where do you think that type of sort of exploration goes? Because that was, I think, a turning point for the industry. And I know you came out, you were very concerned that people were going down and not taking the right precautions.
Yes, I was. And I find it, from if you spin it on what I've just accomplished and what we're sharing today, these sites are war graves, right? So you and I can go over across town and visit Grant's tomb. We can go to Arlington Cemetery. They are kind of tourist attractions, right? But underwater, there's no one watching you. A tourist or a pirate can go to these sites and vandalize them. And so it's a kind of a double-edged sword. I discover these things, I put them on the map, and now they become targets. So I'm very much a proponent for protecting these sites. Underwater tourism has to have some kind of regulation on it. You can't just have anybody just get these numbers and go out there and dive these sites. So it's a big thing. We're opening up the world for people to see these places, and they need to be protected.
Inside this part of the studio, we're covered with images, both the images that you found, but also vintage war images. And I'm looking over your shoulder, and I can see all the sailors that were on that submarine. I know you've had a chance sometimes with your other discoveries to meet the families. You haven't met the families here yet because you're just announcing you found this one. When you meet these families and they see the video and they see sort of the last place their loved ones were alive, what is that moment like?
It is cathartic. It is extremely emotional, and it seems cliche, but it's closure. These men went missing in the war. Then it's classified as missing. It's not gone. So everybody thinks they're missing. These people grew up, these children grew up thinking that their dad's going to come home because he's just missing. And it is understanding and seeing where they are is full circle. We're writing the last chapter of these heroic guys and hopefully retelling a story of these men in these submarines that will resonate with the next generation. These men fought for freedom and a free country and democracy in this world, and they gave the ultimate price. And it's an amazing story.
People watching this may be curious, how does this work? Is it a business? Are you funded? Does the Navy pay you? I mean, it's got to be millions and millions of dollars.
It's a lot of money. It's philanthropic.
It's philanthropic.
Yep.
So people donate money so you can do this.
I have an organization that does outreach, ocean outreach. It teaches and shares this information. Our expeditions are kindly. I was able to raise money with like-minded people from the New Orleans and other areas that are sold their businesses and have lots of money, but they're into the World War II. They've sponsored wings of the World War II Museum down in New Orleans.
They've chosen to donate their money because they know the importance of this.
Yes, and it started out with our first find, and my wife and I, Christine, did a documentary on it, and when we were presenting it at a trade show, Paul Allen's people came to us and asked us to put a project together, and I was putting this together anyway, so we started our presentation to Paul Allen. He went a little different way. He decided to he was going to give me an underwater robot that he was moving off his ship and put a new one on and fund my expeditions. And then he decided to put all that on his ships. The project was well received by Paul, but in the course of presenting, we ran across other benefactors that wanted to put some money into this. So they have contacts in the industry, and we did real well by performing and finding.
Yeah.
So,
with results.
Correct.
What has been the strangest or most amazing thing you've seen that deep in the ocean?
Oh, God. The man's impact. You'll be on these things and you'll see Coca-Cola cans, all right? So it just shows you how small the ocean is getting. Things find their way to these locations. So.
And then, so now you're also on our show tonight to announce that you're sort of transitioning, right? You've done this for so many years, since I've met you, at least for more than a decade, and now you want to sort of change gears. Why?
I realize finding all these submarines is a valiant mission, but we're not going to be the only ones to find them. Other people are going to find them. We've learned so much. We've developed our own patented technology. And I started a company, I started a startup to build these systems and make them available.
What else can they be used for?
The whole blue economy, everything from security on pipelines, fisheries and maintenance, shoreline scanning and understanding. Autonomous vehicles are like satellites. If we want data from the ocean, we have to have hardware, and hardware has to be in the form of robotics. And the more we can get them out there in mass quantity, the more we're going to learn from
How deep can your technology go right now?
Right now, we're focused on about 400 meters, but I'm working with 6,000 meter systems, so we'll be able to build deeper.
6,000 meters?
6,000 meters, almost full ocean depth.
Wow.
No.
Okay, Tim Taylor, congratulations on this big find. I know there's going to be a lot of news.
Thank you.
And once you get to meet the families and talk to them, and thank you for everything you've been doing in locating these war relics. We appreciate it.
Excellent. Thanks.
Coming up next, the country music star suing over poems. That's right, poems posted about him on Instagram. Zach Brown filing a civil lawsuit against his estranged wife after she posted poems that allude to an abusive relationship. Why Brown is claiming she violated a confidentiality agreement. But does he have a case? We'll explain it all next. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More news on the way.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.